Cheers. Okay, bye-bye. Remove from stage. Tania, how are you? You might have your mic muted.
Hey, Rock, am I on here?
Yes, I've got you. Now, what I'm going to do
Oh,
is
I'm having so much trouble with my phone today. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. Let me invite us to camera mode so that way we can get the podcast rolling here. So I'll turn on the video for me first there. That's coming through. Okay, and I'll do the same for you. Invite to video mode. You'll just have to accept that.
Accept?
Yeah,
I'm really
beautiful.
sorry about this. How many people are you expecting?
As many as possible.
Okay.
So what happens is we stream across here on Fireside. It goes over to Facebook. It goes over to LinkedIn. It goes over to YouTube and Twitch. So that's the live stream. Then we push it out again after. So here we go. So I can hear
we're speaking for about 20 minutes. Is that about right?
No, it was going to be more than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see how we go. Yeah, I'm just rushing between.
I'm
rushing between meetings. That's my main problem.
Okay. Well, let's get straight into it, Tania. So we're not wasting time. It's lovely to meet you, and I do appreciate the time that you've put aside to speak to us today. Obviously, you're in one of the leading markets here when it comes to sort of treatment for depression is the main thing with MDMA and psilocybin, but more so psilocybin. Is that right?
No, I mean, Mind Medicine Australia is working across different psychedelics, I guess, psychedelic-assisted therapies to ensure that we can alleviate the suffering from mental illnesses and suicides in Australia. But the two prominent medicines that are being used and that are advanced in advanced stages of research and development globally are psilocybin and MDMA. So they're the two we're focusing on at the moment because they've been granted breakthrough therapy status by the FDA in the US. And that means that they're considered to be potentially vastly superior to existing treatments. And the FDA is now helping to fast track those trials through phase 3 trials to become prescribable medicines over the next couple of years. So we are focused on those, but we are interested in other psychedelics as well, which are being researched around the world, like ayahuasca, LSD, ibogaine, 5-MeO, DMT, and a whole range of others. And of course, what's really interesting as well, Rock, is that psilocybin is being used not only for the treatment of depression and treatment-resistant depression, but also being used for treatment of obsessive compulsive disorders, anorexia and other eating disorders, dementia and early stage cognitive decline, fibromyalgia. They're looking at it for strokes and, a whole range of different conditions, of course, addictions as well. Whereas MDMA is primarily at the moment being used for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, trauma, and also addiction. So has had some great success recently with MDMA-assisted therapy in trials for people with alcohol addiction, for example. And of course, ibogaine has been used very successfully to treat people with opioid and other sort of, strong drug addictions and so on as well. So there is an incredible amount of data emerging from the science that's being undertaken around the world. And the field is emerging very rapidly. We're seeing, predictions of $1 trillion market with when Peter Hunt, who's my husband, and I started Mind Medicine Australia 3 years ago, there was only one for-profit in the space, and now there's, I think, well over 200. And there's probably not a week that goes by where there's not new for-profits emerging around the world who are looking at, capitalizing on these treatments, because there really has been no innovation in the treatment of mental illness really for over 50 years. It's and as you'd know, Rock, the pre-existing treatments are not working for the majority of patients. So in the case of depression, we're only seeing 30 to 35% remission rates from existing treatments, which, mainly antidepressants or psychotherapy. And of course, the side effects can be very significant. And in the case of post-traumatic stress disorder, we're only seeing remission rates of around about 5% from existing treatments. So the majority of patients are not getting well, whereas with these therapies, we're seeing remission rates averaging between about 60 to 80% after 2 to 3 medicinal doses with a short course of psychotherapy. It's really important to say, to anyone who's listening out there, this is psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So it's the combination of the ingestion of a psychedelic, in this case we're mainly talking about either MDMA or psilocybin, under the supervision of trained therapists in a clinical environment. And the patient, of course, never gets to take the medicine home. But it's very important that after these medicine sessions, which many patients describe as one of the most meaningful experiences in their lives due to the sense of connection and oneness and awe and wonder and so on, that those learnings and insights that patients get in those medicine experiences are integrated back into their lives, their work, their relationships, and so on. The medicine itself is not, doing the full work here. It is really working with a trained therapist, because the medicines help the brain to become more flexible, to become more plastic, to reconnect some of the pathways which may have been damaged. And so with the brain in a bit more of a flexible cognitive state, it means that trained therapists can work with the patients to help to go back to some of their traumas and the causes of their suffering. And this is why these treatments are proving to be so successful, because they do go back to the root causes of patient suffering. And a lot of the researchers describe it as rebooting, restarting, the brain, resetting the brain, defragging the dodgy hard drive and so on.
Sure. Yeah. I have so many questions. For you. I just want to start off real quick. Is that the way that I came across you initially is a couple of years ago, a friend of mine went through an extremely traumatizing situation where he witnessed his father in a suicide. And it was another friend of ours who kind of started to research and found out about this sort of therapy for PTSD. And as I've been doing research and following you for a while, it was important for me to contact you and to put out to the listeners these different therapies, because it's almost like he tried everything that he could. Our friend tried everything for our other buddy, and nothing was really working. I mean, it was so traumatizing for him that, although little things combined together would be helpful, he kind of needed that medicine kick. And this is an important show he's listening to. Now,
that's good. I'm glad.
Absolutely. I kind of want to know a little bit how you first got into this and how it evolved to the point that you're at now. And another question I have further down the track is the understanding of what it does to the brain and how it changes. Does it create new neurocortical pathways for the brain because of the damaged ones that it keeps, the tracks that it keeps taking? How does that work in your understanding?
Okay, maybe we'll come back to that second question.
Sure.
Maybe ask me that again in a moment.
I will do. Yeah, I will do.
Okay, cool. So effectively, it's a complete really it's a fluke. I mean, nothing is a fluke in life. Everything happens for a reason. But, I would never have thought that I would be, even speaking to you about anything to do with, drugs. Not that I think of these as drugs. They're medicines. They absolutely are medicines. And, it's really important for all of us listening to understand that this is not something new. I mean, these medicines have been with human civilization since the beginning. You can see this in the ancient Greek and Roman archaeology. So you can see references to these medicines, to the mushrooms, to, elixirs that took people into altered, non-ordinary states and so on. And non-ordinary states have been used since the beginning to help, not only in terms of healing, but also in the terms of raising consciousness, and have been used by Indigenous and religious communities since the beginning. And so I had, though, never come across these medicines. I'd sort of probably heard about psychedelics, but I've always been a person that was pretty against drugs. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be out of control. I didn't really understand what drugs were, I don't think. And, so I'd never had any drugs. I'd never even got really drunk or anything like that. And I don't even drink coffee, because singing has always been my drug of choice. So I've, been a soprano, and I guess I've always tried to protect my voice. So I've never taken substances that might potentially compromise, my voice or my body, because when you're a singer, your body is your human instrument. It's not like playing a drum that's outside your body. It's you. And so I'd always been trying to do everything that would make my mind and body and spirit be in harmony and unison. So, I'd done a lot of mantra and tantra and cryotherapy, myotherapy, psychotherapy, meditation, yoga. I've pretty much tried every type of modality you could possibly think of. But I had never even heard of psychedelic assisted therapy. And I'd never even heard of psilocybin. But one day I was a subscriber to, still am a subscriber to Tim Ferriss's blog, and every Friday he sends out this 5-bullet Friday. And this particular Friday, I remember it well, it was back in December 2015, he sent a blog that said he donated $100,000 to Imperial College for research into psilocybin-assisted therapy to treat depression. And so I clicked on the link. I thought, wow, what's psilocybin, and I read this article that he'd linked to by Michael Pollan well before Michael Pollan had written his book, How to Change Your Mind. And it was an article called The Trip Treatment in the New Yorker magazine. And it was really talking about a trial that was taking place at New York University that had actually 80% remission rate. So people who were experiencing depression and anxiety as a result of a terminal diagnosis. And it profiled one particular person in the article who was a Jewish man who'd experienced intergenerational Holocaust trauma. And I'm the daughter and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. And my husband, his father had committed suicide when he was 13. So though we're high-functioning human beings, we all carry trauma. And, it's something that, as we go through life, it's good if we can come to terms and come to grips with our own trauma, whether it's our own or our parents or our grandparents or whatever it happens to be. It's still going to be part of our DNA epigenetically, And so I read this article and just immediately thought, well, I really think I should try this therapy, because I'd had some flashbacks to things from the Holocaust that I didn't really understand. And I thought, well, it wouldn't it be good to get rid of some of this Jewish angst,
Sure.
And so I said to my husband, we should do this. And he said, oh, I'll leave it up to you, And so I tried to get us into some of the healthy persons trials. I reached out to Robin Carhart-Harris initially, and there weren't any trials going on at the time we were going to Europe. And we didn't want to break the law, and we didn't even know about, the underground in Australia at that time or anything really. And we're pretty law-abiding people. And so we eventually got referred to a guide in the Netherlands, where these treatments are actually legal. And so we went over there and we had this massive experience where we had some Syrian rue first. So Peganum hamala seeds that we had in a sort of a tea. And then about an hour later, we had this, really large dose of psilocybin. Now, I mean, to say that this blew us into,
bits.
multiple different dimensions and into bits was, an understatement. I mean, like, it was really my husband had never had any drugs either. So this was really a profound experience for us. Took us into, obviously multiple different dimensions of altered states and a sense of oneness and connection with everything and everyone, where you feel part of everything, you understand that everything's part of you. And this sense of awe and wonder and gratitude for just being alive in this human incarnation that we're here in. And I've never looked at a single leaf or tree or flower or seashell or cloud or anything the same way again. It's like, and I do feel so much more gratitude for this existence, in spite of the fact that there are so many challenges, in living this sort of, in being a human being.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
the challenge of our own mortality and everything that we experience. Go ahead. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, absolutely. I've done mushrooms before in the past. I don't want to go down a particular drug track because I want to keep it more to the not from what you're saying, but from my experience, right? Because it's very medical, and I think that although I tried it for the experience, there are a lot of people that are kind of self-dosing because they're trying to deal with issues or they're trying to overcome or find their own medicine, right? I do want to go into, I do want to go down a different track right now and ask you the other question.
May
But
I
we have
just
messages
finish?
that come into
May
these
I just
podcasts.
just one quick
Yeah,
thing?
sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, I mean, so subsequently, it took us quite a long time to integrate that experience, as you can imagine, and so we didn't actually do another ceremony with the same guy. We went back a year later and had an even larger dose, and it was even more profound. And at that time, we started to think, wow, if this has this effect on us, what sort of effect would this have on all the disadvantaged people that we look after in our charity? So my husband and I, previous to MMA, have set up 4 other charities, which are all, have been going for between, 22 years and, a few years, but they're all significant national charities that are helping people with everything ranging from homelessness to disadvantage, financial disadvantage, range of mental illnesses, unemployment, and so on. So what sits at the base of any kind of disadvantage is usually mental illness, a lack of self-worth and self-belief, and some kind of abuse, neglect, trauma, whatever it happens to be. And so we thought, well, if we can set something up that would help to start to alleviate the suffering and suicides in Australia using these treatments, surely everyone deserves the chance to have access to these treatments in medically controlled environments under proper supervision to heal their suffering, because then your friend's father wouldn't have committed suicide and so on, potentially. And we all know people like this who've taken their lives who could have been saved. And so we set about really meeting all the researchers and doctors and everyone in the field around the world. We went to conferences and events, and then we decided that we would set up another charity. We'd actually made a resolution not to set up any more charities. In fact, we were divesting our portfolios of a lot of stuff. But this seemed like it had to be done. And really there was no system in Australia or ecosystem in Australia for doing this. Yet there's a wonderful psychedelic society, and there's plenty of organisations who are interested in these treatments and who do all sorts of interesting work in this space. But there was no organisation that was really dealing with the regulators or training therapists or ensuring that there would be medicine availability, supporting enough of the research and development that would be needed in this country and so on. So we set about really setting up Mind Medicine Australia as a charity to raise awareness, to educate the broader community and therapists, to help fund research, to set up training and education for practitioners, and to partner with universities and clinics and regulators to ensure that these treatments could become available to the broader community without people having to break the law and go underground or go overseas to do these treatments. So that was really the goal, I guess. Sorry, and to your next question,
Sorry, I
and
thought
all
you'd
your
finished
listeners'
before.
questions. Sorry, no, that's
problem.
okay.
That's totally fine. There was a lot more to that. Sorry. And that's
okay.
fantastic. It's fantastic that you put this together to have for people to have the ability for somewhere to go to do this now, and in a legal way.
Correct.
Right?
Well, that's the goal. That's to get
yeah, absolutely. Now I do. Yeah. So this is interactive podcast. We do have listeners that do want to drop messages, and we have one right now from Keith Burr. So I'm going to play that here for you.
Sure.
Hey, I was just wondering if she thinks that becoming a possibly a multi-billion-dollar industry in the future has anything to do with how we're actually pursuing it now, because we've had these drugs around for years and years and years, and the only things that we've heard about them are they're bad for you. You're going to lose your mind if you do these. These hallucinogens will make you go crazy. Whenever it's obvious with the studies that we've done that it has a huge, just a marked difference on depression, PTSD, OCD, all these other little neuroses and neuroticisms that people have. But is it actually being pushed forward because it's going to be helpful for people, or because it's going to generate money? Because,
well, that's a great question.
The weed, the same thing went through with it. Just once they found out it was profitable.
That's it. That's the question.
Okay, well, it's a great question, isn't it? And thank you so much for asking that, Keith. I mean, of course, organisations. So my husband and I are philanthropists, so we're donating all our time, and the majority of the money that we have to this cause. So our motives are completely pure. However, like with any kind of industry where there's potential profits to be made, there are going to be people who come into it for both good and, reasons just for commerce. And, we all have to be mindful of that. However, it's important to say that to scale this and to ensure that there is access for people wherever they're based and whatever their financial circumstances, it can't be done just by not-for-profits. There does need to be partnerships between for-profits and not-for-profits to scale the work that's needed and to make sure that not only are there sufficient medicine supplies, but there's enough therapists trained and that there's systems in place with standard operating protocols so that people can be treated properly, safely, and effectively. And that does take a lot of money. So there does need to be investment in the space. And unfortunately, while there's a lot of philanthropic people in the world, some people won't invest in a space unless they can get some kind of return. And so I think what we need to ask is just that, of people coming to the space, that hopefully they will behave ethically and that they will focus on access around these therapies and treatments so that these treatments don't just become available to people who are wealthy, for example, so that only wealthy people or people in capital cities or something have access to them. And that's one of the reasons why we have a huge focus on supporting people in regional and rural and remote areas of Australia, and we're providing financial assistance to doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists and other health professionals in rural and regional Australia, because we think it is really important that there is equitable access to these treatments as they become available. And they will become available very soon. I mean, we're already seeing in Australia that psychiatrists and some other specialist physicians are getting approvals to treat patients on a case-by-case basis through the TGA. But unfortunately, our states, because we have this complicated federal system in Australia, are blocking access to the medicines. So we've got a lot of, for example, approvals in New South Wales with psychiatrists for their patients, but they can't treat their patients because the New South Wales government is blocking the medicines from coming in to treat those patients. And that's really sad, because what happens in those circumstances is that with patients who are suicidal and very ill, they may potentially either take their life, which is devastating and tragic, or they may seek these medicines out underground. And of course, that's not regulated. And there's some wonderful practitioners underground, and we acknowledge them for their dedication and commitment and their wonderful work. But there's also a risk that people underground will also get unethical practices happening, that people will come into the underground taking advantage of vulnerable, unwell people and exploit them either financially or emotionally or even sexually. And, that would be terribly sad. And of course, that does happen. So we need to be mindful of the fact that there is an industry emerging. The train has left the station and we can't stop that emerging. What we can do, though, as a collective is ensure that industry operates in the most ethical way possible. I mean, of course, our current pharmaceutical industry doesn't exactly operate in the most ethical ways possible. So we all need to be very mindful of truth and transparency. And we at Mind Medicine Australia also don't see these medicines as a panacea for everyone or, every person that has a condition. They will work, and they seem to be working for a diverse range of people with mental illnesses, but they're not going to help every person. And they're not suitable for every person either. So there are patients who are screened out of these treatments, particularly those with psychotic conditions. And so whilst these are the most exciting potential therapy that is on the horizon, really the new frontier in the treatment of mental illness and a new way of treating patients, combining a medicine with therapy to great effect, and not just managing symptoms. These are not just palliative treatments. These are very much about healing a patient. And if we can get more patients healed and out of the system and leading meaningful, healthy and happy lives, then that will be the greatest contribution that we can all make to our friends and our brothers and sisters, our human brothers and sisters who are suffering. And we need to find the best ways and most ethical ways of doing that possible.
That's fantastic, and it's a really good outlook on how you put that forward. We do have a message from Chuck. He's over from the US as well. Here we go.
Hey, Chuck.
Excellent topic tonight. As you've kind of talked about, obviously there are places where you can kind of explore this kind of treatment legally, but it's kind of a just a side effect of lack of a structured kind of framework, and that like you're allowed to do this, but it isn't really well integrated into therapies from what I understand. If you go to like Peru and do like ayahuasca, things like that. But are there any other countries or other places that you're aware of or that you've come across that you can kind of use as a model that have really started to integrate psychedelics into therapies?
Yeah, so the best example of that is probably the Netherlands, where there is really an advanced number of retreat centers that are really providing these therapies in very controlled environments with the support of trained psychologists and psychotherapists and doctors and so on. There's retreats like Synthesis, which is a well-known retreat in the Netherlands. And of course, these treatments are very perfectly legal there. So that's really following more of a medical model. Whereas obviously in Peru or parts of South America and Mexico and so on, it's more of the shamanic traditions of having these medicines in those sort of ceremonial environments. And yeah, I mean, there's also in Costa Rica, there's a lot of legal retreats there as well. So that, gradually we're seeing more and more countries where these medicines are becoming available and accessible above ground. I mean, we're also seeing, that Oregon and other states of the US are starting to legalize psilocybin for therapeutic use. We're seeing that also in Canada, where they've legalized psilocybin for patients with end-of-life anxiety and depression, and also for some patients with PTSD and so on. So it's just a matter of time, I think, before more and more countries will start to open up availability and access to these treatments, particularly in medically controlled environments under supervision.
Tania, I'm just wondering if you can go into a little bit about what's involved in the particular therapy. I mean, I don't know if we're distinguishing microdosing here or if we're talking about actual sessions.
No, yeah, absolutely, distinguishing the two.
Yeah, so if you could do that for me, please.
Yeah, sure. So effectively what happens is if you're going to become a patient and have psychedelic-assisted therapy, then you'll meet your therapist, usually a couple of therapists at the moment in the protocol, and you'll be screened for suitability, number one, because as I said before, not every patient is suitable. So they'll go through.
And what patients aren't suitable? I'm curious about that. Didn't want to cut you off. But
no. Well, so at the moment, patients with some kind of psychotic condition, so that can be schizophrenia, bipolar, personality, some personality disorders and so on. But some researchers are now saying that they believe that those conditions will be able to be treated. It's just a matter of, more investment in research to
more understanding
to test that, and but at the moment they're excluded from the research trials. That being said, though, there have been people with bipolar who I think have been in I think there's been maybe a couple of ayahuasca research studies done that have looked at patients with bipolar and so on. So I would never say never at all about this. And this is an emerging field, so there's a lot of work still to be done. But that doesn't mean that we should withhold treatment for those medicines that have been proven to be safe and effective for patients with the right clinical diagnosis. as well. I would say that. Anyway, so the patient
Sure.
then gets to know the therapist. The therapist will talk about what's going to happen in the medicinal sessions. And then the patient will undergo the medicinal sessions, which usually go for about, 6 to 8 hours, where the patient ingests the medicine. In the case of psilocybin, is in a completely altered state, if that's a full medical dose, like the sort of dose that I had, where the patient will undergo complete ego dissolution, and where there will be in multiple dimensions, probably, and it varies. I mean, every single person's experience of these treatments is completely different because we are all unique individuals. And then after, and in the case of MDMA, though, the patient will not have a complete ego dissolution, but they will be feeling warm and loving and have a very strong therapeutic bond with the therapist, which enables them to talk about their trauma without being re-triggered or re-traumatized. And this is incredibly important because with current treatments, if you ask a patient to go and talk about their trauma, it will often re-trigger or re-traumatize them, which could make them worse. Whereas in the case of MDMA-assisted therapy, patients are able to talk about their trauma, to accept what has happened. That doesn't mean they forget it, but they're able to move forwards with their lives with a greater sense of empathy and understanding. And that's why MDMA-assisted therapy is getting these extraordinary outcomes. I mean, in the current phase 3 trials, 67% of patients after just 3 medicinal doses with a short course of psychotherapy went into complete remission from PTSD.
Wow.
PTSD is one of the hardest things to treat.
Sure.
And they're expecting those remission rates to get up to 80% with further integration. And so, sorry, and just to go to it. So the most important thing is after the patient has had the medicinal session, that they have an integration session, 1 or 2 of those, where they really do integrate what they've learned, the insights they've experienced with a trained therapist. And of course, it's critical to say that set and setting. So set is mindset.
Sure.
So setting the right intention for the experience is very important. And usually that might be something like to be open to healing, not to be too prescriptive about that intention either. And setting, that's about where you undertake this treatment, so that the space is appropriate, it's comfortable, it's warm, it's safe, that the therapists are trained, that you've done your due diligence on them, that the dose is pure and correct, the right dose, so that you will have the most effective and safe treatment possible, and so on. So, and microdosing is entirely different because it's usually a subliminal dose of a medicine. So you don't have the visual effects necessarily, or, you can still go on with your day, but you may feel heightened creativity, productivity, because you've got increased neural connectivity, neural plasticity occurring, but not nearly as profoundly as in a full medical dose.
And what would a microdose size be in psilocybin? Is that like 0.2 of a gram?
Yeah, that's right. And there's
Okay,
all sorts of formulations around microdosing. Sometimes you can see formulations around that combine other mushrooms as well, so lion's mane and reishi and sometimes niacin and other things that might be in those formulas, or sometimes people make up pure little microdosing capsules. And of course, famously in Silicon Valley, they say that any entrepreneur that's not microdosing is going to fall behind the ones that are.
Sure. I see microdosing as like the long-term, probably more openly accepted way of doing this to get it on the table more, because compared to the sessions, right? People look at it as, hey, you're sitting around taking drugs, but it's not really the case. Whereas the microdosing is not getting you to that high, so it sort of seems more acceptable to the authorities, for lack of a better word, right?
That's
but
right.
there's 3 or 4 questions here, but one I had to ask you first is that there seems to be a difference between taking the psilocybin treatment and the MDMA treatment. Now, I imagine, I'm not actually sure about the psilocybin. I've heard that people that are experiencing depression can take psilocybin and it can actually lift their attitude and lift their whole emotions for a period of about 6 months. Now, I imagine with the MDMA that it's not quite the case, but I can understand better about the therapy being talked about whilst you've consumed the MDMA because of the post-traumatic stress. is creating those neurocortical pathways in your brain. So to then kind of be high and feeling so good from this medicine, in a way, it's like a love drug, right? Will recreate new neurocortical pathways off that PTSD neurocortical pathway. That's my understanding of it from just trying to break it down. I have no scientific or research
that's
on that.
actually really quite a good description. And it is interesting to see the persistent nature of psilocybin, and both of them, though, have that persistent nature, and MDMA for the reasons really that you described, because you're creating that increased empathy and awareness, that therapeutic bond, where you are able to start laying down new neural pathways. And also with trauma, I mean, I think just being able to speak about it without being triggered is a really key part of that, because I think we all know people who, you know, when you mention some particular thing to them, they just completely will have that fight or flight response. And that's the end of it. You know, either they'll burst into tears, get really angry. You know, we've all experienced this
It's a protection mode, right? It's
Absolutely.
like if they feel that, they protect and they have to get out of it. And yet, if you're in that state, you have nowhere to go. You're actually embracing it more so. So you're kind of dealing with things. Yeah, I can see that. But I don't know that with the psilocybin. So the psilocybin is like you take that dose, and then it's like when you're finished with that and you've come off that, let's call it high for lack of a better word, then it's for a 6-month period, you're not feeling those so depressed states.
Well, actually, a recent study, I think, was it done by Compass? I think it was. Anyway, showing that after a year, there's still persisting effects.
Okay, beautiful.
It's just come out. I think it's on our website, so people can look at mindmedicineaustralia.org, and you can see world news and also MMA news, and you can see a lot of the recent research there. We've got a great Learn section, and I'm pretty sure that article would be on there and on our social media as well. It's just come out.
I kind of just had an epiphany when I asked you that question. I think that people that are experiencing depression tend to experience that emotion because they're dwelling on the past a lot. So I'm just assuming here that maybe going through a session of psilocybin and realizing that about what the now is like, you're not dwelling on the past anymore, and that maybe lifts you away from that feeling. So I don't know if
that's really interesting, and it brings to mind that concept of, you know, when someone has some type of unresolved mental illness or trauma, they keep bringing the past into the present.
Sure. Yes.
And yes, I think you're absolutely right that the psilocybin really helps you to be more present, not only during the actual medicine experience, but ongoing after that. It's
correct,
like, I think I said to you, I never see anything the same way again. That's because I'm more present with what's around me now, you know. So I'm looking outside the window now, just you're reminding me of this, not to be distracted, but I'm looking out, I'm seeing the rays of sun, I'm seeing that the plants have some kind of respiration. They are sort of breathing. You know, I see these things even though I'm not under the influence of any of these medicines right now. And I think that you do start to see the world and other human beings as well. So as you look into the eyes of another human being, you know, you can see yourself reflected back in that. And I wish that the world were more like that we were less divided and that we could actually see one another reflected in one another. I think that would be really wonderful.
Absolutely. So you said something really important there. You said something like, then you actually see the world. And from my last experience of psilocybin, it was almost like we think this is the world that we're looking at, which it is. But when you're on psilocybin, it's like all those filters come down. That's the real world. That's the real place, right?
Yeah.
And
we're not really seeing a fraction of what's really here.
No, we're kind of putting our own blinkers up in life. We're putting our own problems up in front of us in life, and it's like that just kind of dissolves the ego in a way, because you're not egotistical while you're high on mushrooms. That's for sure.
Absolutely,
you know,
and that's what's called the default mode network. So effectively, what the medicine is doing is it's bypassing the default mode network, and from its name, it's what we default to as human beings. It sort of screens out. And this is necessary for us often to function in the world, you know, and get stuff done. But it's not healthy to be in that state all the time. It's actually very important for us to experience non-ordinary states because it's from those that we can connect to a much bigger, whole, and it's just not about ourselves anymore. It's about
connecting with the universe in a sense, right? It
Yeah,
really is. There's no better way to say
unity
it.
consciousness is
Yeah, that's a
the
good
word
way
I'm
to say
looking
it.
for. Yeah.
We have 3 or 4 questions here. Let me get
Mm-hmm.
through them for you. We have a couple from Keith, a couple from Joey. Here we go.
I absolutely agree with what you said about the diagnosis of psychopathy or schizophrenia, the antisocial personality disorders in general being a really kind of taboo thing to talk about and stuff, but they are treatable in my opinion. It's just we've got a scarcity or we've got a surplus of something, and if you get the right cocktail, then maybe we can start like taking the stigma off of the labels. I mean, that's how we start, isn't it? By having an honest like dialogue without having to tiptoe around what the correct verbiage is and like the politically correct terms for things. Crazy is it's a bad thing. It's a bad word to use. It's dismissive, and it's just proof of somebody that's lazy and doesn't want to understand something.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I totally agree with you, Keith. I think, one of the biggest problems that we have at the moment in our society is our tendency to want to put people into boxes, whether that's a diagnosis or some other kind of box. I've always said we talk more to boxes and screens than we do to one another, and we want to try and put everyone in a box. In my TED talk, How Singing Together Changes the Brain, I talk about the fact that, we're born in a box. We get put in a little crib that's like a box, in a hospital that looks like a box. We go home to a house that if you draw it looks like a box. We have to tick boxes. We have a box phone in our pocket, a box computer in front of us, and then we go out of this world often in a box. And, I think the biggest challenge that we have as human beings is to see the whole, is to see much more than what we're seeing. And I personally, and a lot of therapists agree that the DSM-4 and a lot of these sorts of diagnosis tools are out of date now, and that we really need to look at the whole person in the context of their environment, their upbringing, and everything else. And it's really not a healthy thing to put people into boxes with some kind of diagnosis, because in a way, once you do that, you stop people from actually getting out of that box as well. And then we project onto them that they're in that box, and it's just not it's not a way to create a more healthy, happy society. So I think the more that we can stop giving people names and boxes and diagnoses, the better. People just want to get well. So whatever it is that's stopping them from living in the present and from experiencing a sense of self-worth and so on, is what we need to look at and see how we can help. And these medicines are one part of what could help a lot of people.
Okay. I'll pop through these questions before I'm going to get back to my one or two. So here we go is Joey.
Rocky, what's up, baby? And madam, thank you for coming on to my friend's podcast. I've been really interested in this topic, very, very interested in it. Being somebody that, I like psychedelics. I always kind of did. But I was wondering with the microdosing situation, whether it's in your own environment, like your home, and you're practicing the microdosing, or you're in a medical environment, like you said. I was wondering if is there a lot of dancing that goes on with the treatment, like involuntarily?
He's trying to be a wise guy there. Sorry about that. Thanks, Joey. We have 2 more from Keith. Here we go.
But okay, long story short, in summary, I'll say like diabetes, nobody gives people shit for going and getting insulin, right? And one of these days, hopefully, we'll be able to do the same thing with somebody that's got, antisocial personality disorders like, psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism, Machiavellian, all of them. Because we're able to have that dialogue because the stigma has been taken away from it and people have actually done the work instead of pretending to be empaths.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that.
Okay. One more from Keith.
Well, what they do is they help you disassociate. They help you get out of your own way, make you more open to suggestibility and, the counseling and advice of somebody that's actually a professional instead of as where you being sober and completely present in the moment. You you stand the chance of always being in your own way. And that's the unfortunate part about depression and people's egos. And Rock, he's talking about how the ego gets in the way and stuff. Ego death is a great thing, but as long as it is voluntary and you got people around to support you. But if anybody has ever went through or know what ego death is, you know what I'm talking about. That's a real fun one, ain't it? Oh, great talk, guys. I'm sorry, I won't keep taking much of every time anymore.
All good. No. Thanks, Keith. I appreciate you
Agree
chiming
with
in.
all of that, Keith.
So I know you're fairly pressed for time, so I want to try and get to the tail end of things here for you. So I want to know how you're helping people currently, or where they can go to get help. At least the people in Australia. I believe it's around the whole of Australia, Mind Medicine Association, right? So
Correct.
How can they get involved? What can they do?
Lots of
and
ways.
how? Yes. Okay. Awesome. Let's hear it.
So there's lots of ways to get involved with Mind Medicine Australia. Follow us on social media. We've got a great Learn section, like I mentioned before. We've got chapters all over Australia. So we have over 30 chapters. So you're in Perth, I think, Rock?
I am.
And we have a Perth chapter, a very active chapter over there that runs screenings and Q&A panels and all of that. We'd love you to be part of that. Maybe you'd like to even MC or host one of our events in Perth.
Would love to.
So
Absolutely
please reach out to me about that after.
Okay,
I'd love to connect you to that. But so join our chapters. We have volunteering opportunities. We run a lot of events. We run a global webinar series and podcast series with some of the leading researchers and doctors in the world. They're all free. We also run the first ever certificate in psychedelic assisted therapies in the Asia Pacific region, and we have a world-class faculty. So psychiatrists, psychologists, GPs, psychotherapists, paramedics, other physicians, nurses, social workers, occupational therapists, and so on, are students in that course. And the demand for that training is through the roof, as you can imagine. Like, probably the most sexy new career is being a psychedelic assisted therapist. Everyone wants to learn those skills on top of their, other professional skills as practitioners. And we have a lot of other training and education programs through our Mind Medicine Institute. So we have a 4-week online course in psychedelic assisted therapies, and we have other holotropic breath work and other courses on consciousness as well emerging. So we've got a lot of training. We also have a harm reduction service, which is re-emerging, which will be around supporting people with integration and other things if they happen to be working with the medicines and need some support. We do have a lot of psychologists, so if people are, and psychotherapists and so on, who we work with. So if people are using the medicines underground or whatever and they need some support, they should reach out, because it is important, as I said earlier, to have proper integration with these treatments. Furthermore, I just want to reach out to everyone, in your audience and community and just say we're resubmitting applications to the TGA for the rescheduling of these medicines, MDMA and psilocybin. And there'll be a public submission phase opening up in a couple of months' time. And I'll reach out to you then, Rock. And we just love you to ask your community to put in supporting submissions, or just tick the right boxes and put in supporting submissions so that we can get, 5,000 or more submissions, because it's only through really putting pressure on the government, state and federal, that these medicines will be rescheduled, and that will make it much easier for patients to be treated through special access pathways like what I mentioned earlier, and also for clinicians to access the medicines more easily for research and so on. So for all of us, whether we're researching or whether we're patients or doctors wanting to work with these treatments, we all need to collectively work together to ensure that these treatments, these medicines are rescheduled. And we're also doing a lot of trials now, so you'll see that we're part funding a lot more trials over the next few years. And we just announced the largest trial in Australia, which is a healthy persons trial for 200 therapists to try either psilocybin or MDMA in a group
Right.
setting. I mean, I think it'll be a fascinating study.
Wow, yeah, absolutely.
And so our CPAT students and graduates get to do that trial if they want to be part of that, as do other people who've trained in altered states or psychedelic assisted therapies in other parts of the world. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, you are a very busy woman.
And
I know
just
it's
the
been
other
hard
thing
to pin you down. So it's
that's
great that
okay.
you could have this talk, and you have got so much going on. I would absolutely love to get involved in helping however I can.
No, that's great.
Even if you have other members of your team that want to talk on
Oh no, we
updates
would.
along the way
I'd
or
love
something.
you. You might want to interview Nigel and Trail, who run the certificate.
Sure.
They're really fascinating, and I'll line that up for you.
Not a problem. That
But I
sounds
guess I
great.
just want to say to everyone out there, we are a charity. My husband and I are philanthropists, but we can't do this alone. So we have all sorts of ways that you can donate and support us. And all donations are tax deductible. We have, you can donate monthly or one-off or whatever you like. But even if it's just, $10 a week or whatever you can do, we really would appreciate you supporting Mind Medicine Australia. It's a big, hairy, audacious mission. We can't achieve it on our own, and we're just enormously grateful for all the people that support us, our team, our advisory panel ambassadors, all of our people with lived experience, all of the therapists, and just everyone who's working with us, not only in Australia but globally, to really ensure that these treatments can become part of the medical system. And we stand on the shoulders of giants in this field who've given their lives and careers to making these medicines available. So we acknowledge all of them, all of the medicine keepers who've brought these medicines to us, so that at least we know they're around today. And I just want to say to all of you, it's not far away. We just need to work together to ensure that these medicines can become available to heal the many people who are suffering in our community.
Now, a lot of my listeners are from the US. So how can people from the US get involved? Can they still
All
sign
the
these
same
petitions
ways.
or help?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
So they
absolutely.
can put in submissions. They can certainly donate and support us. They can look at our website. In fact, we got approached to start chapters in other countries too of Mind Medicine,
Awesome. That's
all
wonderful.
over the place. So
Mind Medicine
there's
America.
many ways. We do have a lot of fans and subscribers to our updates from the US and Canada, and so please sign up and you'll get our updates. You can just sign up on our website and you'll get our regular newsletters. You can always join our free global webinars. We get, like in our global webinars, I reckon at least a third of the audience is from overseas, from either Europe or the US or Canada or, South Pacific or different Asia Pacific and so on. So, yeah.
Awesome. And for those in Australia, is there a wait list to get in? Is it expensive for them to do this procedure? Like, how do they get involved? And actually, I'm trying to talk on behalf of anyone that's actually experiencing any of these things and want the help to happen right now. How can they go about it?
Okay, so at the moment, as I mentioned before, you may get a TGA approval through a psychiatrist if you have one for treatment, if you meet the criteria. But as I said, the states are still blocking access. We're working hard to change that. So at the moment in Australia, unless you're part of a trial, it's pretty hard to get access unless you go underground. And as MMA, I can't advocate for underground use. But if you do go underground, please do your
seek the
due
professional
diligence.
Advice. Yes.
Do your due diligence, okay?
Yeah.
And get proper integration support.
I'd like to put someone forward from Perth for you if I can, off air, if there's someone I know that's needing some help in that area.
Right.
So,
and maybe we can connect them to our Perth chapter as well.
Perfect. That would be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think the best thing that we can all do, of course, by the way, a lot of Australians are approaching us now that the borders have opened again, and they're travelling off to Holland, and they're going and doing these retreats and having the healing over there as well. It's very sad though that people have to leave Australia to get proper medical treatment.
Sure, it is.
And that's why we all have to work really hard together to get these treatments available.
The pandemic would be increasing business in this area, I'm sure, because it's causing a lot of mental anguish with people, and mental health is just ridiculed throughout society right these days. It's so many people, doing this podcast thing and speaking to a lot of people along the way in the last 12 months. A lot of people are going through things. I was going through things, and even though you don't think it, but when you really scrutinize yourself, you see that everyone needs a little bit of help. It's not.
Oh no, they
there's
do.
nothing
Like,
shameful to reach out to people.
absolutely. I mean, the research shows, so pre-COVID, 1 in 5 Australians had a mental illness, 1 in 8 were on antidepressants, 1 in 4 older adults and kids as well getting prescribed them. But since the pandemic, I mean, research is coming out over the last few months saying that 4 out of 5 Australians are reporting a decline in their mental health.
Wow.
So this is not, this is all of us. We've all been affected by this. Division in our community is never a good thing, in families, between friends. And so we need to do everything we can to reconnect with one another and create the healing community that we need to, support one another in our human tribe and to connect with our planet and protect it as well. So
Absolutely. I could talk to you for hours about this. I have so many questions, but I know you're busy, so we can line up some other things in the future.
No, that'd be fantastic, Rock.
Yeah.
Just reach out about all
I
those
will
things.
do. So can we give you a plug on social media where people can find you on Twitter, on Instagram,
sure.
Facebook?
Yeah. So mindmedicineaustralia.org is our website, and as I said, we're a registered charity, so please support us in any way you can. We also have Mind Medicine AU on Twitter and I think Insta, and then we have Facebook. My personal Twitter is at Tania De Jong, so that's my full name, TaniaDeJong.
Where is that from, by the way?
Dutch.
Dutch.
Father.
Okay. Right. Okay.
My mum was born in Vienna.
Yes.
And so we have lots of different platforms where you can connect with us on, but the best way is to sign up to hello@mindmedicineaustralia.org, and then we'll update you with our newsletters and keep in touch with you via our news. And we'd love to hear from you, honestly. Like, we love meeting people who are interested in this field, and please reach out, whether you're a therapist, a patient, just a member of the public who's interested, or whatever your profession or whatever you need, please reach out and we'll do all we can to help you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you meeting me today. I look forward to more talks in the future with yourself and other staff of yours that are knowledgeable on this, because I really want to do some deep dives into some of this, some of the brain activity and things that happen with the healing. So we can say that for another time. By the way, you said you were from, you're a descendant of a Holocaust survivor, right? I did a podcast here maybe 6 weeks ago on Ben Lesser. He's a surviving Holocaust survivor, 93. Wonderful story. Yeah,
amazing.
So I'll send you that link to listen to, because
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, not a problem.
Well,
Tania,
thank you so much. Send me the link. We'll share it further. And
yes.
Just send me a note and we'll connect you to the Perth chapter and a whole lot of other things as well. And also I'll send you my albums.
Let's talk about that real quick before you go, because you are into the music, and I'm going to assume, without looking into it too much, that you're into the music for a passion of yours, of course, right? But it must have some sort of effect on brainwaves too, with people's
No, it's my
positivity,
profession. So that was really my profession.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I've performed all over the world, and my 2 previous charities have a lot to do with music and creativity and connecting people to themselves and to one another and so on. And, yeah, the neuroscience of singing is actually really profound. So in my TED Talk, How Singing Together Changes the Brain, which has had, 110,000 views or whatever.
Wow.
There is I talk quite a bit about the research around singing, particularly with other people, that improves your memory, language and concentration, makes you smarter, healthier, happier, more creative, because it releases endorphins through the right temporal lobe of your brain. So it's, it has similar types of effects to psychedelics. It just doesn't have the full on, usually, though I think some people get visions when they're singing or listening to beautiful voices.
But it just lights your soul up. It really does.
It lights your soul up, and
I'm
it
not
increases.
a singer. I try to sing, but I'm not a singer. But
but it increases.
It's always enjoyable.
No, but it truly does increase the neural plasticity in your brain. So it can ward off Alzheimer's, dementia. I see a lot of stroke patients who can't remember things, but then they start to sing and they start to then remember everything again and reconnect things. So singing is particularly good for reconnecting damaged neural pathways and creating new neural pathways. It's very, very good for you.
does that have, I'm not sure if you know or not, but with just playing or learning an instrument, I found when I was growing up, all the smartest kids at school played an instrument, and I really thought there was some sort of connection between playing an instrument,
totally.
maybe with the singing like you're talking about, but it
No,
was
it's
just
exactly the same.
fascinating.
I mean,
I
yeah,
could
but
see
singing's even more
definite
profound
difference.
because it's.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Just lost you for a sec, but yeah, I mean, instruments is great, but singing's your human instrument, and so it's your body, yourself that you're putting out there. It's not you playing an instrument; it's you, in a sense, playing yourself, sharing yourself. And that's the most sort of unique thing, is if you can find your true creative voice, that will help you find your meaning and purpose in life. And so I've done a lot of work. I used to run a huge singing teaching practice for many years in my 20s. And it was really interesting just seeing how people's self-worth started to improve as they found more of their real voice. You know, they weren't just doing a tiny bit of their voice, but it was more of their full voice.
Sure.
You know, you can learn a lot about people through their speaking voice as well.
Okay. What are you learning about me?
Oh, I like your speaking voice. Oh, you're a pretty open guy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice, warm. You know, it's like it doesn't feel like your voice doesn't sound too blocked. I think you could probably even resonate more, to be honest.
Okay.
But maybe just
Teach me
take
how and I'll
deeper.
do it.
Yeah, focus more on your breathing as you do your speaking, and I think you'll find that your voice will start to resonate through more of the different resonators in your body.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. If any pointers, I'll go ahead and I'll practice that.
Okay, well,
for
we'll
sure.
have to do that another day.
Not a problem.
All right.
All right.
Well, I've got to go now, but
yeah, we just have a quick message before we leave. It's from Elvis the King. Here we go.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I had a question for you about the music you're talking about now, because that's sort of my thing. How do you feel about the 440 hertz versus 432 hertz and the effect it has on the human brain activity? I think it's very interesting that it was purposely changed from 432, which is the natural vibration of things, to 440, which creates a cacophony of brain waves in your head and kind of makes people go crazy a little bit. I was just wondering if you studied into that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So 432 is that frequency that is for healing, and a lot of programs at the moment, like there's many programs being created to help people calm down, to sleep, to become more creative, productive, and so on. And Newcalm, for example, is one of the companies doing that, and they use 432 hertz. And it's interesting. I think that the more people can be tuned into 432, the better. But I recognise that 440 is often used more traditional settings and so on. But yeah, I encourage people to go and find. And there's quite a lot. You can go and look on YouTube, and I think you can find like clips that are using 432 hertz that help you calm down and sort of help align your neural pathways better and so on. So I encourage people to go and look at that. This is another whole program, Rock.
It is.
I think
it really
we should
is,
talk
yeah.
about music and singing and stuff on another show. I think
We
it'd
can
be
do that.
a lot of fun.
Totally understand. Yeah. Do you have time for one more question, or you have to go?
Well, I really need to go, but I'll just carry this and just go where I
I'll
have
just
to go.
play this real quick.
Yep.
And
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. Tania D. I was in rock. I was just being silly. Like I always am. But anyway, but for real though, like dancing always came along with my experiences with psychedelics. Now I know that if you're in a positive mind state, I think that the mind can help you heal better, like whatever you're going through. My mother-in-law had like stage 3 or 4 breast cancer, but she's very strong faith and stuff, and like in her faith, and but she came out of it. It was pretty bad. I remember it was a bad diagnosis and stuff. But my brother, on the other hand, my blood brother, he can make himself sick, that he gets so stressed out or so worked up about stuff. You think like with the psilocybin or the MDMA, that you're in a happy mind state, like, or maybe is that the key to the healing?
Oh, that's a long question. I mean, it's a long answer, really. I mean, so I think, the mystical experience, the happiness, the joy, the bliss that some people experience through these medicines is certainly a big part of the healing process, but it's more than that. I mean, it's also obviously, the chemical that's reconnecting some of those neural pathways as well. And honestly, I think it would be really good for you to interview Nigel and Trail, because
Let's do that.
I think
Yeah.
they'll be able to also answer some of these questions, and
Not a problem.
and we'll be thrilled to speak with you. And I've just got to go now. I'm really sorry.
I know that's fine. I understand. I didn't know if we could press that last question,
No.
but that's fine. I
Okay.
appreciate your time, Tania. I'll press end show so that'll be able to stop here. But
Thank you.
we
And
look
send
forward
me
to
an
having you
email with
again.
all that stuff, okay?
I will
I'll
do.
send, I'll
Looking
send you my
forward to it.
albums as a gift too.
Beautiful. Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate
Thanks
that.
so
All right,
much.
lovely.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, I'll just remove from stage here. Tania, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I've got this on mute, but there we go. You can clap it up again. Appreciate you joining in for the listeners and supporting the show. Yeah, I really want to do more of a deep dive, but obviously we are pressed for time. So I was lucky to get that hour and a bit there. So next show coming up is, what are we today? Wednesday for me. So it'll be Thursday night for you for rocscomedycrew. So we're looking forward to having you guys in there where we do muck around, a little bit of banter, and then shotguncandy podcast on Sunday morning, which is, I think the subject's going to be about Mark Cuban. So looking forward to that. That's right, Mark. It's your app. Come on and say hello. All right, guys, all the best. Thanks for joining in. Bye-bye.